So, what would it actually take to bring down a modern-day dictator? We're about to dive into a hypothetical scenario that feels like it was ripped straight from a Hollywood script, the takedown of Nicolás Maduro. We're going to break down the anatomy of how an operation like this could go down, to really understand the forces at play.
Okay, picture this. It's just past 2 in the morning at Fort Tuna, supposedly the most secure military base in all of Venezuela. And inside, Nicolás Maduro, the man who went from driving a city bus to ruling an entire country, is sound asleep. In this scenario, he feels completely safe, totally untouchable, and he has absolutely no idea his entire world is just seconds away from collapsing.
And this is where things get, well, completely lopsided. See, on the ground, Maduro's got his 3,000 loyal soldiers, he's got Russian air defense systems, but what he doesn't know is that a ghost army of 150 American aircraft is closing in. We're talking stealth fighters, bombers, and special ops helicopters carrying Delta Force. He isn't just outgunned, he's already lost. The fight was over before it even started. So that brings us to the million-dollar question, doesn't it? How on earth does a guy who started out driving Route 43 in Caracas end up as the #1 target for the world's most advanced military? Well, to understand the takedown, first, you have to understand the man and his very real, very dramatic rise to power.
So, let's rewind the clock. We've got to go back to the beginning. Nicolás Maduro, he grew up in a working-class family in Caracas. And as a young guy, he drove a city bus. Every day, he heard the frustrations of regular people, and it convinced him that the entire system was rigged against them. And that one belief, it would end up defining his entire life.
And then in 1992, everything changed. A charismatic army officer named Hugo Chavez tried to overthrow the government. Now, the coup failed, and Chavez was arrested. But when he went on TV, he didn't surrender. He looked into the camera and said, "For now." Just 2 words, but for the young bus driver watching, that was it. That was the spark. Maduro became a devoted follower of Chavez's movement.
And this right here, this is the fatal flaw in the whole story. When Hugo Chavez was dying, he had to pick a successor. He had smarter, more experienced, more capable people to choose from. But he picked Maduro. Why? Simple. Chavez prized one thing above all else: loyalty. He chose loyalty over competence. And that single decision would turn out to be absolutely catastrophic for Venezuela.
And you know, the consequences of that choice? They weren't some far-off problem. They hit immediately. When Maduro took office in 2013, the country was basically a one-trick pony. It was all about oil. So when oil prices crashed, his total lack of experience was brutally exposed. See, he had learned everything from Chavez about how to get power, but he had no clue how to actually govern. And these numbers, wow, they just paint a devastating picture of the human cost of that failure. These aren't just stats on a chart. 7 million people, think about that. 1 out of every 4 Venezuelans had to flee their own country. It created the biggest migration crisis this hemisphere has ever seen. And for those who stayed and dared to speak out, his regime was ruthless, killing protesters and locking up thousands of political prisoners.
Okay, so this all comes to a head, the breaking point, which was the presidential election on July 28, 2024. For the first time in forever, the opposition wasn't fractured. They all rallied behind one guy, a respected diplomat named Edmundo González. You could feel it in the air, real, actual hope. People thought, this is it, this is our chance.
But the opposition didn't just hope this time, they were prepared. They organized and collected the physical paper receipts, the tally sheets, from 85% of the polling stations. And the proof was undeniable, right there in black and white. González had won in a massive landslide, 67% to 30%. But then, the government announced its own official results, a total fantasy that just flipped the numbers on their head. And the government's excuse for this blatant theft? Get this, a cyber attack. A completely flimsy story that not a single person believed. So when Venezuelans flooded the streets to protest, Maduro's response was swift and it was brutal. 25 people were killed. And González, the man who actually won the election, had to flee for his life into exile.
So that was it. Stealing the election in broad daylight was the last straw for the international community. And in our hypothetical scenario, this becomes the trigger. The United States starts drawing up plans for a direct intervention, giving it the codename Operation Absolute Resolve. For Maduro, the clock is now officially ticking.
Now, an operation like this doesn't just happen overnight. It's a slow, methodical squeeze.
In this timeline, by August, the small CIA team is on the ground tracking Maduro's every move. By November, an American aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, is just sitting off the coast, a very clear message. In late December, maybe there's one last phone call, one final chance for Maduro to surrender peacefully. He says no. And on January 2nd, the final order is given: execute. And that brings us right back to where we started, the night of the raid. See, before a single American soldier even touches Venezuelan soil, U.S. Cyber Command kills the power grid at Fort Tuna and the backup generators. At the exact same moment, precision bombs dropped from 40,000 feet could take out his air defenses. The entire compound is plunged into darkness and silence. It's completely defenseless before Maduro even opens his eyes. And then, the end comes fast, really fast. While helicopters lay down covering fire, elite Delta Force operators are already fast-roping onto his roof. A breaching charge blows his bedroom door clean off its hinges. They find him in the hall making a desperate run for a hidden safe room. He's only 5 feet away when a soldier tackles him hard to the marble floor. It's all over in a matter of seconds.
And what happens next is just completely surreal. The dictator of a country, standing there in his pajamas, barefoot on the cold floor of his own palace, is being arrested. And it's not by his own police force. It's by the American FBI, reading him his rights on U.S. federal charges of narcoterrorism. He's being arrested like any other common criminal.
I mean, just look at this. This table says it all, doesn't it? It perfectly captures just how fast and how far he fell. At 2 a.m., he's the president and dictator, sleeping in his fortress. Just 3 hours later, by 5 a.m., he's a prisoner of war on an American warship floating in the Caribbean Sea.
And with that, the journey from bus driver to dictator to prisoner is finally complete. It really brings to mind that old saying, power corrupts, and when corrupted power falls, it falls hard. And it kind of leaves you with one last question about the whole nature of tyranny, doesn't it? Was it all worth it? All that stolen power? All those ruined lives?